Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock somewhere, at least on my screen here. So we're going to get started, but first, please rise and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Senator Prentice.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start, I just want to make an announcement. I have to be out of here by 11:15 for another meeting, so we're not going to if we are execing, we're not going to do that beyond that time. In the meantime, we're going to start with our bills. The first one is Senate Bill 526, and we have the prime sponsor, Senator Whitley. Please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Becky Whitley, and I'm honored to represent Senate District 15, which includes the wonderful communities of Bow, Concord, Pennacook, and Hopkinton. So as the mother of an elementary-age child in public school, I'm honored to introduce Senate Bill 526 to address safety and to improve learning in New Hampshire schools. We all know that as our climate warms, our aging school buildings and infrastructure will just have to adapt. Historic heat waves across the United States over the past several years have forced schools to shut down, pivot to remote learning, or dismiss students early in the day. It's hard to remember sitting here in the middle of winter, but we are not immune to heat waves in New Hampshire anymore. Temperatures in New Hampshire have risen more than 3 degrees Fahrenheit since the beginning of the 20th century. Yet, as we know, most schools in New Hampshire don't have air conditioning units that are equipped to cope with sweltering heat or even have units at all. This bill takes a very small step towards addressing this issue to help ensure that students have adequate physical learning environments. There are now numerous bodies of research which have shown the negative effects that extreme heat temperatures can actually have on students' learning, their social emotional skills, and their ability to perform on exams. I apologize. I had worked with the stakeholders on an amendment, and it's just not ready from OLS. It should be ready, this morning. The amendment that we will be presenting is actually a more distilled version of the bill as introduced, but with exactly the same intent. Under the amendment, the statutory change is now under the existing school air quality statute rather than the Public School Infrastructure Fund. And that latter change was a suggestion of the Department of Ed, who is here to provide technical questions. The amendment also gives school districts the opportunity to establish a plan with temperature range goals, but as with the original bill, still sets a maximum and minimum temperature which classrooms can be occupied. I'm happy to take any questions, but we'll defer more technical questions to the folks behind me. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for the committee's support of Senate Bill 526. And again,
Thank you.
apologies that this amendment is not ready for your review.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? I have a question.
Sure.
Who is going to do this assessment and what kind of money are you looking for?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and one I think that will be answered by the folks behind me, and also in the amendment that will come to the committee.
Okay, so right now you're not looking for an appropriation.
No, there is an appropriation. There will be an appropriation in the amendment. I apologize.
In the amendment. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I will now call Megan Tuttle. Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Megan Tuttle, president of NEA New Hampshire, representing about 17,000 educators statewide. And if it's all right with the chair, I do have Brian Hawkins with me as well, our GR director. So I'm here today to express our strong support for Senate Bill 526. We all know many of the school buildings, as we just heard, they're aged. Warm classrooms at the beginning and the end of the year are nothing new. This has been happening forever. But at the start of this school year, we heard about the issues of sweltering classrooms more than ever before from our members. Beginning of September, occasionally there's a day where the classrooms get very hot. This happened when I was in the classroom with 18 years teaching. This year, though, it turned into a full week. With extreme temperatures on the rise and becoming more frequent, we need to expect that the problem is just going to continue and it's going to escalate for longer periods of time at the beginning and the end of the school years. We need to plan for this because we know that our students are negatively affected by extreme temperatures and the problem is only going to get worse. The more we do now, we feel we'll be better positioned in the future. We feel this bill with the accompanying amendment that you just got is a small but really important step in the right direction to address the extreme temperatures in New Hampshire schools. I did experience this firsthand, not as an educator, but as a mother. I have 3 children in the public schools in Concord, and the entire week that week, temperatures were above 90 degrees in their classrooms. We added to it that the water bubblers in most of the schools in Concord were not functioning because of high lead levels because of a bill that was passed last year, which, trust me, I'm thankful for that bill being passed, but it just, you know, it was a perfect storm of having to bring water in, temperatures over 90 degrees. And when my kids were coming home from school, it was just too hot to learn. And that's essentially what it came down to. You know, the learning conditions, they weren't ideal. They were just miserable. I saw classroom temperatures that were posted from this week from educators in the 90s. They took pictures of the thermometers in their classroom and the temperature was above 90. Nobody should be in classrooms at that point. The New Hampshire House and Senate canceled all business in the legislative office building because the air conditioning was not working that week. So legislators weren't working at temperatures, but we were expecting children to be learning and educators to be educating and do their jobs in those temperatures. Studies have shown when classroom temperatures are especially extreme, children are not learning. We know when classrooms are too hot, they struggle to learn. Educators struggle to teach. Students perform better when the temperature is less. In written testimony, I will submit, and also online, there'll be links to various studies that will back up this so that you can go into those, but I'm not going to read them all right now. The Teacher Shortage Committee report, as well as surveys that NEA New Hampshire has done of their members, indicate that student behavior challenges are a top stressor in having educators leave the profession, and that extreme heat in buildings can affect the students' social and emotional well-being. We all know as adults, if the temperature is too hot, we're not happy. We're short with people. Same as when it's too cold. It's the same thing with children. That's not only anecdotal, it's backed up by research. And so as educators trying to manage already challenging behaviors in the classroom, hot temperatures are not helping. And if, as you know, behavior issues with one student is going to affect the entire classroom. We believe Senate Bill 526 strikes a balance between setting standards to optimize student learning and acknowledging that some temperatures are not only challenging, but unsafe. We also recognize that one size fits all is not going to work, and that's why this does bring it back to the local district to come up with a plan that works best for their facilities. Having those plans to proactively keep classrooms in the prescribed ranges and mitigation protocols for when they go beyond that range is good for students and for educators. One of the challenges is, as I mentioned earlier, we know school buildings are aged. I mean, you can walk around just Concord alone. If you go to Runlet, it is an old building. And there's no question, you know, with building aid suspended for a significant part of the last decade, this has made it more difficult for local districts to keep up with repairing or building their needs. There is an appropriation, as we said in here, as Senator Whitley said, and we're hoping that this committee will pass the amendment in the bill to make sure that we can change this. As I said, we will include in the testimony the studies that you can reference, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Do you want to speak before we have a question?
do you mind? Is that
Go
okay?
ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to speak to the bill and the amendment. So the original bill was modeled after a good portion of what Representative Ladd had worked on with the House Education Committee after having received numerous requests for studies on different components of or aspects of school buildings, air quality, temperature, sound quality, all sorts of things. And it ended up morphing into an effort to use at that year, this was 2 years ago, public school infrastructure funds to fund a facilities assessment where we would be looking at all of our public schools facilities through a contract that the Department of Education would carry out. And except at the time, once that was looked at, the Public School Infrastructure Fund was, those funds were used for security measures instead because there was a recent school shooting at the time And understandably, that committee wanted to, go that route with the funds. Upon some technical conversations with the department, it was looked at and felt like that the air quality statute would be a better place for this, both for the language that you see before you, and then that the appropriation not be under the Public School Infrastructure Fund, but already in the building aid statute, there is a component of that that refers to a facilities assessment, but there has never been any funding for that. I even think that the department had tried to apply for some federal funds related to that, but were unsuccessful. And so that's why you see the appropriation here is to accomplish that. And then, of course, as President Tuttle mentioned earlier, the standards set for temperature. So I just wanted to mention that. And then also, I believe this is the yet uncorrected version of the amendment, because there is a typo I see in line 16, the funding of the funding. And also, if you do pass this, we would suggest that be non-lapsing as well, because it'll obviously take time to contract and carry out these assessments. And the other portion there that needed to be corrected was, rather than assessments required under Section 1 of the Act, it's actually facilities assessments are outlined in RSA 198-15A Roman 5. So, and I think that's what we had been waiting for an updated version. This was what came in a couple of days ago. So just add that little bit of history on the transformation of the language, and then also the issues needing to be corrected in the amendment. Thank you.
Questions from the committee members? We have none. Thank
Appreciate
you
your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Lisa Dillingson? Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Senate Education Committee for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Lisa Dillingham, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Dover Middle School. I come before you today speaking for myself, asking for your support of Senate Bill 256. The beginning of the school year is always memorable for students, whether it's buying school supplies, having a meet and greet with the teacher, or just getting back together with friends. It's a time of excitement, some nervousness, and even sadness. As teachers, we expect our students to have many different emotions and experiences, especially during that first week. So we prepare ourselves and plan for all the possibilities of how to best acclimate students to the new school year. This year, however, there was one thing for which we could not plan. During our students' first week of school, outdoor temperatures were already in the 80s by the time school started each morning, and went upwards of 95 degrees in the afternoon. The dew points, which tell us how humid it is, made it into the oppressive range every day. For many people, summer days like this mean spending the day at the beach or staying inside in the air conditioning because it's just too hot and humid to do much of anything else. However, my students and I spent those days in my second floor classroom. The very first day of school was quite warm, especially once I added 22 other bodies. But my fans were on, fans that I purchased myself. The overhead lights were off, and the windows were open along with the door to my classroom. I did everything I could to help circulate the air to keep the classroom cool, but the temperatures in the classroom slowly climbed up to the high 80s by the time the bell rang. While it got quite uncomfortable toward the end of the day, it was tolerable for most, and I felt I was able to give my students a great first day. When I entered my classroom on the second day, though, I was greeted with a wall of warm, stale air. So I immediately checked the temperature. The thermostat read 85 degrees, and it was only 6:30 in the morning. Because the fans had been turned off and the doors and windows closed and locked from the day before, all that hot air had been trapped inside overnight. While I quickly opened the windows and turned on all the fans, my efforts did very little to drop the temperatures by the time my students arrived. The temperature kept climbing throughout the day, getting as high as 90 degrees. I tried to keep students in their seats as much as possible, just so they didn't exert too much energy. This is the exact opposite of what I like to do during the first days of school. Normally, my students are up and active in the classroom as they participate in get-to-know-you games and engage in team-building activities. Instead, I adapted my lesson plans to reduce the amount of movement, and we did smaller, quiet activities. Even with those adjustments, many students became sluggish as the day wore on, and keeping them engaged became more difficult. By the third day, not only was it the hottest day of the week, but I had to give my students a test to get preliminary data on their math skills. Giving this test on any day is challenging enough, but with hot and bothered fifth graders, it was painful to watch as they labored through the test. It became increasingly difficult to keep them positive or even motivated. Some students even sought help from the school nurse as they experienced dizziness and headaches as the day wore on. I myself went home that day feeling ill despite drinking a lot of water. The experiences I just shared are my own, but I wasn't alone. Throughout the week, I was sent pictures of thermostats from other buildings in our district. In one elementary school, which is only one level, the thermostat was 85.7 degrees at 7:45 a.m. In another elementary building, temperatures in classroom ranged from 82 degrees in the basement to 90 degrees on the second floor. Our littlest students were reported to be walking around with wet paper towels on their heads and necks. After-school practices were canceled as temperatures climbed, and students were discouraged from active play at recess. In temperatures such as these, there was no learning happening. I felt like my only job that week was to keep kids cool and occupied. This was indeed a memorable first week of school, but it's not one I wish to remember. And unfortunately, without adequate cooling systems put into place, this experience is guaranteed to repeat itself. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm willing to take questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that your testimony? Do you want us to have a copy of it? Thank you very much. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on this bill. Is anybody in the audience who likes to say something? Senate Bill 526? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on 526.
Right on time.
Hmm?
Is it almost right on time?
Yeah.
What's happened?
Now we'll open up the hearing on Senate Bill 524, and the prime sponsor is Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 524. 524 is a straightforward bill. It requires school districts to identify sports, whether it's a women's sports, male sport, or female versus male sport, or co-ed, and then require that the appropriate biological sex play in the appropriate division, if you will. As you know, Title IX and some of these other sports, things that were put in because men were predominating sports, and there were not opportunities for biological females to participate in sports. And so Title IX came in to allow for for women to be able to participate at high levels in sports, both at the collegiate and the high school level. This bill just seeks to maintain that, to continue so biological females have a place where they can excel and participate and not be impinged upon by biological males. As we know, it's a medical standard that we know that men or biological males have a physiological advantage in areas of sports. They have higher bone density, higher muscle mass. They produce O2. And they process O2 differently. They have larger lung capacities. All these physiological changes put females at a disadvantage when it comes to sports. And so for the very thing we did to give them an advantage, we're now taking away that advantage. And that's based strictly on science. You'll notice nowhere through this bill the word gender is used anywhere. This isn't about gender. This is about biological sex and the physiological differences in biological sex in order to protect. I'm a father of 4 kids, 2 of which are girls. And I would not want my daughter to be bumped from a sports team because a biological male who has a physiological advantage chose to play on the female team. And so for this reason, I'd ask you to support this bill to protect women's sports, protect our daughters, to allow them to be able to participate at a level that maximizes them and not be at a physiological disadvantage to biological men. There are some other cause of action language in here. Basically, we indemnify schools. If they're following the law, they can't be sued, is what we say. We indemnify the school if they're following the law. So happy to take questions.
Questions? Thank you. None. Beth Scare? Let's see how many there are. 1, 2, 3. There are quite a few of you having signed up to testify on this bill. So if you have something written down, just summarize it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to limit the speaking to 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, I'm a grandmother from Nashua, and I'm here in support of SB 524. My daughter participated in co-ed soccer as a teen, and she knew in advance the boys were going to be playing, but she said that she found the play rough and she did not enjoy it. It's not the same sport when boys are playing.
Could you state your name, please?
It's Beth Scare, Nashua. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but we're hearing more and more stories about female athletes being hurt in sports competitions where the boys are taller, faster, stronger, and using their power advantages in ways that leave girls seriously injured. Recent injuries caused by males competing against females include broken bones, head injuries, and teeth knocked out. These girls deserve physical safety. And girls are not being warned when boys compete in their sports. Instead, they're lied to and told that these boys are girls. And they're gaslit. They're being gaslighted and forced to pretend. And this is psychologically damaging, and these girls deserve psychological safety. They're not warned when boys are going to be changing and be naked in their locker rooms. And this is a serious kind of sexual abuse. And these girls deserve safety from sexual abuse. And the same is true for boys. Boys deserve protection from having girls change in their locker rooms. Let's stop the lie that it's acceptable for men to compete in women's sports. Let's stop pretending it's okay. And I also wanted to point out that just today, I saw a news story in the New Boston Post about a boy competing in women's track and field for the, let's see, there's a boy rated as the top high jumper in his division for girls track and field. And he's, by all accounts, going to win the competition, the state competition this weekend. And I don't know how anyone thinks this is fair. I mean, obviously, you're going to hear from people who think this is somehow okay. But I'm asking you to please vote for this bill and protect girls. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Molly Brennan?
Good morning. Thanks for hearing me today. I stand in opposition to this bill. My name is Molly Brennan, and I'm from Ware. Throughout the avalanche of anti-trans bills in recent months, I have read and listened to various experts speak on the biological and psychological realities of transgender people. I have taken in the data around population sizes, instances of participation, instances of injury. I have learned how puberty blockers prevent physical secondary sex characteristics and also support the mental health of transgender youth. All the facts and figures add up to trans kids participating in spaces that align with their genders is overwhelmingly beneficial to trans kids and overwhelmingly not impactful to cisgender kids by the numbers, not by opinion, by data collection and analysis. Conversely, I have watched the proponents of these anti-trans bills ignore the facts and figures presented by pediatricians, psychiatrists, and endocrinologists, and the firsthand lived experiences of transgender people and their families. Their only evidence are personal, religious, and cultural opinions, and an unsophisticated understanding of chromosomes, hormones, sex, and gender. I have observed the mistaking of discomfort with danger. Feeling in danger when there is no danger present is a phobia or a manifestation of trauma. Just because someone feels afraid about a future wherein trans girls have a nice life and enjoy activities like sports doesn't mean it's dangerous. The data shows the opposite. In fact, unfounded fear should not be the basis for making law. The Bill of Rights does not grant us comfort at all times with everybody around us. There is clearly a level of discomfort by a vocal minority towards transgender people.
1 minute left.
Thank you. And they are translating this discomfort into entitlement, that laws should be made to keep them comfortable and exclude people they don't like. I am very uncomfortable with armed white Christian straight men. Yet I seem to keep voluntarily stepping into rooms with them. And I am not lobbying to take away their health care or their rights to play sports, which is interesting because that demographic statistically poses a very high threat to kids' health and safety and ability to grow into adulthood. Bad faith arguments around safety were applied by pro-segregationalists in regard to Black children. The myth of hypersexuality and genetic proclivity toward athleticism in Black boys and girls is still maintained by racist parents and other adults. Discrimination's aim in those cases and in this one is control, not safety. Google image search Catherine Switzer attacked by Marathon official and Ruby Bridges protest to make the connection. Vote no, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait a minute, there may be some questions for you. Any questions from any other committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kathy Holmes, did you want to speak? Okay. And again, if you have a written, to make a summary of it.
I have enough for everyone.
Okay, but you can tell us a summary.
Yes, Kathy Holmes, Chichester. I should probably say I am the campaign manager for two representatives, Clayton Wood and Cyril Orrs. Of course, we agree on all of this, but in respectful of your time and obligations, I have on this one piece of paper selected out of the three Epic Times articles the key points to be made, and then at the bottom is my own opinion, and so I'm just going to start down there because the ones above are self-explanatory. But I did see a sign out in the hall that was for, trans rights, our human rights. But in the middle article, Olympics and the transgender, it says gender identity is not a protected category, but sex is. And now my part at the bottom, let's be truthful. Our knowledge of history shows us that men are either honorable or not. And my cartoons there show on the right, there's a bunch of, we've got men flashers. You never hear about women flashers. Peeping Toms, you don't hear about peeping Janes. And the threats here, the attacks are always the men invading the women's space. Now, I put an asterisk down by women at the very bottom because of E. Jean Carroll, I kind of have to qualify that. It has never been women before that are the, accosters, but she's different. Okay. And the Holly before me, I was hearing a lot of the things she was saying. You could just flip that. It depends on your ideology, where you're coming from. You can say the same things. I think that's probably all I need to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Ty Thomas? Tye, I think is the first name, and it looks like THOMRS. The first name is definitely Ty, Tye. Nobody in here? Maybe they're checking outside. You, Ty?
Hi, my name is Ty Thompson. I live in Nottingham, New Hampshire. My pronouns are they, them. I've been a lifelong athlete. I can tell you that participation in athletics in high school was central to being able to live in my body in a way that was safe and felt powerful and contributed to my emotional well-being. I've been listening to some of the testimony that's happened in this room already today. Trans girls are girls, trans boys are boys, trans women are women, trans men are men. The ability to have access to the social spaces that support health and well-being for human people in this world is essential. Our policies need to support access for everybody in ways that are equitable. I understand competition. I understand that there's an awful lot of variation in bodies regardless of your gender, whether or not you're cisgender, transgender, however you are in the world, and that athletics is full of ways that people have advantages, whether that be access to health and nutrition, finances, the bodies they are born in. That's when you put your toe on the start line, that's what you accept, that the world is full of differences and that you're there to participate. That being said, there's a tremendous amount of evidence that supports that trans athletes are not at an advantage with the supportive affirming gender care that they receive. The Olympics and NCAA also have rules that allow participation of trans athletes. There's no reason we should be legislating discrimination, especially in younger grades here in New Hampshire or at collegiate levels. I'm in opposition to this bill, and I urge you to find that also. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Courtney Reed?
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you, Senator Ward and members of the committee. My name is Courtney Reed. I serve as policy advocate with the ACLU of New Hampshire, and I'm going to speak in opposition to this bill. I've provided a handout for you all to review that covers some of the ACLU's concerns with SB 524, as well as some of the other bills that would prohibit the participation in sports for transgender youth. I just wanted to start out by saying that denying anyone an opportunity to participate in sports or any curricular activity is just harmful for all students, and that transgender youth simply want the opportunity to play in sports for the same reasons that other kids do, to gain the benefits of belonging, to be a part of a team, to learn self-discipline, and to promote self-esteem. But beyond that, because this bill uses biological sex to determine one's eligibility to participate on a sports team, the bill raises serious constitutional concerns and would put New Hampshire in violation of Title IX of the Civil Rights Act, where Title IX applies to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex in schools, and this doesn't exempt sports teams or extracurricular activities from that policy. Speaking a little bit more to that, Title IX also states, and you can read in my testimony, that no person shall, on the basis of their sex, be excluded from participation in, denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity. And the DOE has, in recent years, also released guidelines for schools to apply sex-based discrimination to someone's transgender status. So what this bill would do would put schools and coaches in a really difficult situation
1 minute left.
where they would either have to risk losing federal funding in violation of Title IX, which a majority of courts and the U.S. Appeals Court for the Ninth District have ruled that policies like this are in violation of Title IX, or face the liabilities of the cause of action that this bill creates, and be at risk of a serious cost. So I think that educators are very fearful about the position that they should be in should this bill become law. But not only that, the Granite State has done a lot of good work in recent years to promote inclusive policies, and a amendment to the non-discrimination laws that were passed in 2019 also applied these laws to educational settings. So schools have a duty to also promote inclusiveness. And this bill would undo a lot of that good bipartisan work that we saw in 2018 and in 2020. The NHIA has policies that consider one's transgender status, and I would urge the committee to review those policies. But a blanket ban, will have really devastating effects for transgender youth and for their peers. And as someone who has personal experience playing volleyball in high school, I think if this bill were to become law and I would face the consequences of it as a teen girl, I would just be devastated to see my friends potentially be, not able to play with them anymore.
Your time is up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm open to taking questions.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Maya Engelbert?
Hello, my name is Mia Engelbert, and I'm from Manchester. I'm here just to speak and put like a human face on this. I am a transgender woman, and I don't feel it's right that this body is basically attacking transgender kids who can't do anything about it. They can't vote you out. They can't exactly come here to speak on this. These bills always affect a small amount of people. Whenever we hear about them in other states, it turns out that there are a single digit number of transgender athletes. So why is this body going after such a statistically small number of people? It feels like institutionalized bullying to me, and it's not right. My transgender brothers and sisters and non-binary people all deserve the same opportunity that their cisgender peers get. They deserve to play sports, to build camaraderie with their peers, to learn important life skills, to learn the value of teamwork.
and what are the health benefits and any other benefits they may derive from athletic competition. I don't really know what else to say, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mia. Representative Jess Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Representative Jess Edwards, representing Rockingham 31, that's based in Auburn. I'm here today as a co-sponsor and a supporter of this bill. I would like to make sure that the committee considers some other factors. That is that Title IX was passed in 1972. It was an overt act by the federal government to segregate sports on the basis of sex. Women at that time had very few scholarships. And frankly, if you looked at sports back then, female sports, they just weren't very good. The segregation by sex was challenged because as a result of that law, men's scholarships were reduced so that the money invested in the men's sports could be reapplied to women's sports. That was a very overt segregation on the basis of sex. It was challenged, it was supported, and it changed our world. Women now compete at the highest levels. If you take a look at women's sports now, it's incredible. Basketball is just incredible. It's so revered that in the last year, 90,000 people showed up to watch a women's volleyball tournament at the University of Nebraska. It's a world record for all women's sports everywhere. And so the policy decision of 50 years ago has paid tremendous dividends. We see great progress. So I stand and say, this is a women's rights issue. And I don't care for the insults saying that this is meant to discriminate against anyone, but this is a protection of women's rights. And the Army does this. This is reality-based life, living. In the Army, we go ahead and we go to war with men and women integrated in the force. In Afghanistan, my gunner was a woman. I had all the confidence in her, but when it came time to creating the teams that would go kick in doors and do violent things, those were men. And the reality is that men are bigger, stronger, faster in general, and so the segregation just makes sense because we know that men are bigger and stronger and faster than women in general and should not be beating up on women in competitive sports. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Lang. Oh, Senator Prentice.
Senator Lang, go first, since Bill.
Thank you. So Representative Edwards, thank you for your testimony. So my question, and for taking my question. So my question is, so based on this, you're an advocate for the science around the medical science that is both conventional and historical, that advocates and says that men have a physiological, biological males have a physiological advantage over women?
You know, I'm a healthcare administrator, and so I'm familiar, but I'm not an expert. But I do know what I am an expert in is that the Army, when they created physical fitness test standards for men and the same kind of standards for women, that the two standards are very, very different. Like in order for me to pass the push-ups, I needed to do at least 42 push-ups. And for a woman to pass the push-ups, she needs to do about 12. And so this is institutionalized in one of the most reality-based organizations on the planet. So I just think that reality matters, and we should conduct ourselves and create legislation and social policy that maps into reality.
Thank you.
Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward, and thank you, Representative Edwards, for taking my question. So what would this mean to schools in New Hampshire if they violated Title IX, if we passed a law that was in conflict with that? What could the consequences be?
I'm not in support of the creating fear-based policy. We don't know what's going to happen with Title IX. What we do know is what has happened with Title IX, and Title IX has withstood lots of legal challenges about the segregation on the basis of sex. What we have now is an administration that is playing with the rules and the interpretation of Title IX, but I don't think that that's really been adjudicated. I'm not a lawyer, but I think this is well plowed ground for the most part. And as long as New Hampshire behaves in a way that's consistent with that precedent and is consistent with the reality that that there is no exclusion if somebody can go play another sport, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, follow up? Yes, not a question, just a comment. Representative Rhodes, thank you for your response. I'm not looking to stoke fear. I'm looking to gain an understanding as a steward of the state and the local communities, universities, schools down the line. What could the consequences be? I always think that that's our responsibility to know. That's why I'm asking this question.
I would recommend we get a real constitutional lawyer in here then, because I think the history of Title IX has withstood many, many challenges on sex-based discrimination. It wasn't intentionally meant to segregate the sexes, and it's withstood challenges for over 50 years. So that's a pretty good track record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Linz Jacobs? Is there a Linz Jacob in there? Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Linz Jakehouse. I live in Dover, and I oppose this bill. There's no reason to change the NH Interscholastic Athletic Association policy that currently includes trans athletes. I'd like to read some testimony excerpts provided by people who couldn't be here today and add a few of my own thoughts. But first, trans athletes vary in athletic ability just like cisgender athletes. One high jumper could be taller and have longer legs than another, but the other could have perfect form and then do better, explains Andrea Yearwood, a student track athlete. One sprinter could have parents who spend so much money on personal training for their child, which in turn could cause that child to run faster, she adds. In Connecticut, where cisgender girl runners have tried to block Andrea from participating in the sport she loves, the very same cisgender, meaning non-transgender girls, who have claimed that trans athletes have an unfair advantage have consistently performed as well as or better than transgender competitors. Overwhelmingly, we do not question girls who are assigned female at birth, although some of them may be significantly taller or vary in hormone levels than other girls. However, runner Caster Semenya was assigned female at birth despite having XY chromosomes, but was still made to undergo sex testing before being cleared to play. So if this bill were to pass, it would allow for the questioning of gender nonconforming women who were assigned female at birth and identify as women. This bill is harmful to all of us. A person's genetic makeup and internal and external reproductive anatomy are not useful indicators of athletic performance, according to Dr. Joshua D. Safer. For a trans woman athlete, there is no inherent reason why her physiological characteristics related to athletic performance should be treated differently from the physiological characteristics of a non-transgender woman. And previously before this committee and the House Education Committee, Michelle Foisey testified that she beat male athletes in track. It is telling that only a handful of adults want to block all transgender girls from playing the sport that they love. When we hear from young athletes, they are overwhelmingly supportive of their trans teammates.
1 minute left.
Those of you who are on this committee have likely heard from Lane Jocelyn, a now 19-year-old transgender woman who played high school soccer with other girls throughout high school. My closest friends played soccer with me in middle school and throughout high school. No one had a problem with me being transgender. There were no issues in the locker room or bathrooms, and I was treated exactly like everyone else. I guarantee no one on the opposing team even had any idea that I am transgender. Playing on a team is such a unique experience with many life lessons. I enjoyed the friendship, school spirit, give and take, exercise, and learning how to handle defeat. One of Lane's teammates, Ellie, said, I had the pleasure of having Lane on my team during high school during the soccer seasons. Not only was she a fantastic teammate, but at no point did I think she didn't deserve a spot on the team or was out of place. She was where she should have been, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Another one of Lane's teammates said, Ed Lane was incredible to watch on the field and hard to defend against, not because she was born male or had any biological advantage, but because she brought her all to every team practice and game. She pushed herself to her limits every day, but she also loved the sport more than anything. And she inspired. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from members? Seeing none, thank you. Who wants to come? Somebody wants to speak.
Thank you so much. I have a meeting upstairs. For the record, I'm Representative Linda Tanner from Sullivan District 5, representing the beautiful towns of Sunapee and Springfield. And I'm here today because I feel this bill is a civil rights bill. And also because I taught physical education and health for 35 years. Much of the physical education was coeducational. From grades K through 12, there's a vast, vast difference between how women develop and women that are girls have different physiques and boys as well. So I've had classes where there's been a 6-foot girl in with a boy that's still 5'1" and looks like maybe he's 9 years old. So the rules of sports and the way sports are set up really are set for safety. And there's actually been no documented injury that was caused intentionally by a transgender person. And injury is inherent in sports. It's really something that everybody kind of admits to. So this bill it promotes the fear of people who are different. It causes people to fear transgender people who are their neighbors, friends, relatives, teammates, and children. It singles out a group of people and sets them in the place of being less acceptable and second-class citizens. When you force transgender people to be misgendered in order for them to participate in day-to-day life, you make them less safe. You are setting them up to face severe bullying, assault, and harassment. Being included on a sports team or being included in school and being accepted helps that. This bill excludes them from the basic public services and access to all educational offerings. It makes it nearly impossible for transgender people to safely participate in school and public life. When we single out a small group of people to take away their civil rights and stir the pot of public opinion with fear and hate against them for the only crime of being different, being misunderstood, and making us feel uncomfortable, we are starting down a very dark road that history has shown doesn't end well. So I urge you not to abandon New Hampshire's value of fairness and freedom because of fear-mongering, misguided, and false information meant to divide us. Sports aren't more unsafe because transgender people participate in them. Thank you, and I'll take questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing
Thank
none.
you, and thank you for giving me.
Representative Harrington. Tim Horrigan, I'm sorry. Close enough.
I was looking around for Representative Michael Harrington, but he's not weighing in on this. He would take a different position from me anyway. So I'm Representative Timothy Horrigan from Stratford County District 10, which is the town of Durham. I sit on the House Judiciary Committee, so I'll quickly use a little bit of my 3 minutes to bring up something which I didn't cover in my written testimony, which is all about the merits of the bill, which is a lot of the procedural stuff is, in my mind, pretty questionable. There's supposedly the failure to comply with the section of the waiver of sovereign immunity. That's a pretty serious step. And then there's all the cause of action, which I'm not exactly sure why somebody's merely competing against somebody they believe to be trans has been injured. So I'm not sure why they're aggrieved, but that's apparently the intent of it. There's obviously nothing in there to protect trans athletes who want to participate, which I think is their right to participate, and they should be allowed to. Or also, you may have cis athletes. We're especially worried about cis women and cis girls, but this also prevents trans boys and trans men from competing in men's sport or even biological females. But so that part of it, I think, is pretty serious, and the whole bill is a bad idea. And in my written testimony, I have to summarize it very quickly now. First of all, I mentioned I'm a season ticket holder to the UNH women's basketball team, so obviously I'm a supporter of women's sports. My two sisters both played sports in school. We're all in our 60s. This was about the time of Title IX, although my the sister and myself and the younger, my two sisters, we were both terrible athletes, but that one did participate in field hockey in high school, and then the other one also participated in field hockey. She was a pioneer in women's ice hockey, one of the first women's teams in high school, and then she also rowed in college, even with the national championship regatta. So she was a much better athlete than me, notwithstanding the fact that I had the XY chromosomes. I probably had more muscle mass. I certainly had higher bone density and all the other things that are supposedly so incredibly necessary to be allowed to participate in sports. So this title, I'm going to get back to also another thing about what I have my written testimony about, which I'm sure you all got an email, just got hard copies. I'm sure you've all read it twice. It also bans, as I said, also bans so-called biological males from positive females from men's sports. Aside from any trans males who may want to continue participating in sports,
1 minute left.
Oh, 1 minute. Okay, so there are already girls who participate. Well, football, I guess, is officially considered a co-ed sport. There are, for example, my sister was a rower. There's coxswains on male teams. That's a common practice because that's one of the few roles in men's sports where being small is actually an advantage. And the existing rules for athletics, it should be self-governing the teams. It's on gender identity, and they have very detailed rules, which don't always work perfectly, but it's better than what's in this bill, which is just what you were at birth. And finally, a lot of these horror stories, a lot of them, the problem is not that the athlete was trans, and sometimes we don't even know if the athlete was trans. Like I went on about, we haven't heard about the case of the field hockey player in Massachusetts injured. That tells me the protective equipment was bad, and actually the supposedly trans girl on the field hockey team, supposedly she was 5'10" and 150 pounds, which is, bigger than me, taller than me, but that's not like an incredibly big person. So like whatever happened wasn't because she had such incredible strength. And anyway, a man who would have been on the other end of that incident would have also been injured too. So fine. And
Your time is up.
okay, so I think this is a bad bill. And somebody did bring up the example from New Hampshire of a girl who's, I think, 1 inch better than the other girls in the state in the high jump. We don't even know if she's actually trans, but if she is, that's certainly a very unfair thing. And it's a lot of these cases, it's a pretty obscure competition that normally sports fans wouldn't be paying much attention to. So anyway, hopefully you'll kill this bill, and hopefully I won't have to speak against it in the House. So thank you.
Thank you. And the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Nancy Brennan.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my testimony. I'm from Ware, and I would like to begin by saying that any discussion of transgender youth in sports needs to begin with all of us acknowledging that these kids are real. Every major medical and mental health association, from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry to the World Health Organization, supports trans people. It's hard in the age of social media to hear the truth over the din of vicious conspiracy theories being spread by the likes of Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro across the internet. But listening, acknowledging, and supporting this population is more important than ever. Transgender girls are girls. Transgender boys are boys. A report titled Fair Play details the benefits of gender-inclusive sports. Quote, transgender youth are already vulnerable to discrimination, harassment, bullying, and social rejection. Exclusionary policies such as sports bans further legitimize transphobic attitudes by sending the message that transgender youth are not welcome in spaces that are otherwise open to others. I urge you to read the whole report. My written testimony lists all of where I got my information. There are so many bills targeting trans athletes across the country, yet the number of trans athletes in public schools is very small. One estimate by the Williams Institute, and I found this hard to believe, is that there may be no more than 100 transgender females playing on sports teams in public schools in the whole country. Recent reports from Gender Justice and NPR show that transgender girls do not have an unfair advantage. You've heard it before, and it's true. There are many factors that determine athletic ability. I coached cross country for a 7 through 12 school. By the way, I wasn't allowed to run cross country because I was a girl and girls weren't allowed to run.
1 minute left.
But I did run and I did coach. And one little girl, an 8th grader, consistently outran older girls. The coaches complained that it wasn't fair because she was too young. Go figure. What is fair? Is it fair that the high school tennis champion has parents who could afford private lessons since he was 6? Is it fair that some cisgender women with a condition called mild PCOS have a makeup which is very advantageous for physical performance? In a way, sports are not fair. Body type, muscle mass, access to top coaching all play a role. But othering and erasing a small group of youth who just want to play, that is the ultimate in unfairness. Thank you.
Your time is up. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. David Trumbull. I'm where?
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull. I'm from the town of Ware, and I oppose this bill for a few reasons. First, I think the question should be asked, what would a fair process to make this decision look like? And I urge you to just look at the International Olympic Committee. Their policy is based on the goals of safe, inclusive, and equitable environment. They want to look at everything. This bill does not look at the idea of inclusion. It simply looks at one group being excluded. The other goal that they use in the IOC is that the decision will be based on appropriate evidence rather than being assumed on the basis of an individual's transgender status. There has been no scientific evidence presented at this hearing, and I've sat through many of these, providing you with evidence that this bill stands upon solid evidence. Secondly, I will give you some evidence on this point. The Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport did a review of all literature from 2011 to 2021 in peer-reviewed studies and in academic journals. They concluded there is no firm basis available in evidence to indicate that trans women have a consistent and measurable overall performance benefit after 12 months of testosterone suppression. The review suggests that sports should support inclusion of trans women in the female category in support until there is robust and peer-reviewed evidence that it is not safe or fair to the other competitors. That is every study over an 11-year period. In the United Kingdom, there was another study that looked at, I think, 30 studies. I don't know the exact number, but it concluded there is no direct or consistent research suggesting that transgender female individuals have an athletic advantage at any stage of their transition. That's evidence. I urge people who are in support of this bill to provide evidence. Let's go back to some of the legal points. There was a speaker earlier who raised the question of the military. Transgender people can serve in the military. They serve in their personally identified gender. So a transgender woman serves as a woman. Another issue came up in regards to Title IX. The speaker said, well, we're going to need a constitutional expert. The U.S. Supreme Court has reviewed Title IX, which was set up and has the word sex in it. It applied it to the area of employment law in the Bostock case. In that case, it said that sex includes gender identity. So just to review, how should this decision be made? You should look at all of the evidence and consider the goal of inclusion. Second, you should acknowledge that transgender women are women. Third, the evidence suggests there is no advantage for transgender women. That's based on all of this available scientific studies available. And lastly, I think that you are in danger of running into Title IX if you pass this bill. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Lang.
So I just want to ask a question around, you were talking about the fact that there's no evidence that transgender women have a physiological advantage, but you qualified that with a statement of if they have medical intervention, right? They have to have some sort of medical intervention, and then you're saying it negates, but absent medical intervention, absent puberty blockers or testosterone, I don't know what they call that, but absent that, you agree that biological men have a physiological advantage over biological women?
I would suggest that if that is your concern, then you could adopt a policy similar to the NCAA policy, which is 1 year of testosterone suppression medication in testosterone levels below the maximum allowable levels for the sport. This bill is not compliant with NCAA policy. But I would also add that the study that I cited to you said that sports should support inclusion of trans women in the female category, so that even with the 12-month of testosterone suppression, their conclusion is that overall, looking at everything, equity, fairness, safety, there is very little concern about competition, but the equity for inclusion outweighs it. So those are a few answers to your question.
So, well, again, I'm not sure I got the answer to my question.
Okay, sorry.
My question was, absent medical intervention, do you agree that on a physiological basis, a biological male has physiological advantages over biological female based on medical studies?
Not necessarily. You just heard studies about testimony from people who say that there are so many variables in sport, you can't make a blanket statement like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Nancy Biederman.
Good morning. How you doing?
Morning. It is still morning.
I know. Just to refute what the last person just said, I looked up, and as of January 3rd, 2024, the Olympic Committee has said that trans athletes must have completed their transition before the age of 12 to avoid unfair advantages to biological females. So they just made that decision. I will say biological men are not women. I don't care what clothing they wear. I don't care what drugs they take, and no surgery can make that so. And another point that has been made in the past about sports and trying to figure out whether someone is a biological male or female, all sports require physicals, all of them. Every sport that you compete in and you participate in public schools or any schools, you have to have a physical. So on that physical form, biological sex can be put there, no problem. And a doctor is required to truthfully fill out all forms because they're held liable for it. And another topic that keeps being brought up is how great sports are for a person. And as a former athlete, one of the biggest things that taught me was to be honest and sportsmanship. In the sport that I played, badminton, we didn't have referees. So you had to honestly call whether the birdie was in or out, and you had to be honest about it. And yeah, you'd like to sit there and call them out when they were actually in because that would give you a point, but that's not being honest. And you had that trust of the athletes on your team, and you had the trust of the athletes on the other team to call that point either in or out truthfully. Biological men competing in women's sports, they're not being truthful. And as far as I'm concerned, they're cheaters, and they are cheating. And we know that biological men are stronger, they're faster, especially if they've gone through puberty. You cannot reverse puberty. And I ask and I support this bill, and I support protecting women's sports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thanks. Laura Brigade. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm from Hudson.
You state your name and
Laura Brigada from Hudson, New Hampshire. And I just came here today because I feel very strongly that girls and women should not have to take off their clothes as the price of participating in a sport or any other educational activity. Please remember girls and women, their privacy and their modesty. Thank you very much.
wait a minute. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Representative Jeannie Notter. Jeannie Notter?
I don't think she was speaking.
No, she's not speaking.
Oh, she's not speaking. Okay. Then Anne Marie Banfield.
I have to look at that.
Anne Marie Banfield, parental rights advocate in New Hampshire. I would advise checking the British Journal of Sports Medicine that says trans or biological males maintain an athletic advantage over female peers even a year on hormone therapy. So there is science behind that. Peyton McNabb urged North Carolina lawmakers to ban trans athletes when she was injured during a volleyball game. I played volleyball in school also. I can't imagine if a biological male was on the other side of that net and slamming that ball, but she was injured by a trans athlete because I think somebody earlier said that this has never happened. It has happened. We have special needs children in school. We have physically disabled children in school who cannot qualify for some of these teams either. And it's not discriminatory that they can't play. So what that identity group of people have done is they've come up with Special Olympics and given them opportunities that meet their challenges. So maybe the answer to this, and I looked through the bill, there's no ban on a transgender team. So if transgender children want to play athletic sports, how about doing something along that line? There's no ban on that. It's not discriminatory because a biological boy can play on the boys' teams. This isn't discriminatory. Modesty is something that a lot of girls are brought up with. We heard earlier about girls just need to get over their discomfort. Well, sometimes, and I know that from talking to retired police officers, they will tell females to hone in on that discomfort, that's sometimes your warning signal, and that's what tells us how to avoid predatory behavior. So making girls uncomfortable in situations where they feel uncomfort, there's that reason there. And breaking down a female's modesty is never an answer. In fact, it's frightening that somebody would even promote that as something that's good.
1 minute left.
1 minute, okay. I think finally, you don't harm girls to make another group feel better. There is alternatives. And when something like this if this bill were to pass, then we have to look at how do we meet the needs of those transgender children. And again, if schools want to be inclusive, then you come up with a transgender sport, a sporting, a team. And then there are ways to address that. That's really all I wanted to add to this discussion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions? Timothy Lang.
So thank you for taking my question. Thank you for your testimony. So my question is pretty simple. The bill, as I designed it, has a co-ed provision, which means that you don't care about what biological sex they are. So the bill already has a provision. You don't need to create a separate transgender. A school could just identify a sport as being co-ed, and transgender persons could play on it.
Right.
Yes?
Right.
That's
Right. I played co-ed softball and I played girls softball. And there is a huge difference. And I played co-ed softball 1 year because literally I was frightened when that ball came flying at me. So yeah, to your point, but there is a huge difference between the girls team and a co-ed team.
follow.
Follow up?
So again, though, there's no ban in this,
Sure,
right? Anywhere
exactly.
through this bill, right? A school could identify a sport as being a co-ed sport. Biological men, biological women could play on the sport with no problem whatsoever. There's no ban or exclusion for, it's up to a school district to make a local decision. Is that
Exactly.
you read
Yep.
the bill?
And make that available.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Victoria Sullivan.
Good morning, Chairman Ward and members of the committee. My name is Victoria Sullivan. I am from Manchester, New Hampshire, and I am here representing myself. I am here to testify in support of SB 524, although I find it frustrating that this bill is even necessary. I also find it frustrating that the 1972 Title IX bill, which was enacted to protect women and women's sports, is now being used as a weapon against women. This testimony has been shocking to me this morning. Since Title IX was enacted, women's sports have surged, as have scholarships and professional athletic opportunities for women. The fact that we are here to revisit this in 2024 is almost surreal. Almost as surreal as sitting here being called, listening to Representative Horrigan use the term so-called biological woman. And he even demeaned women's sports when he said the women's high jump that was used as an example is an obscure sport that people don't pay attention to. I find a lot of the testimony being demeaning to women today. So too is the fact that many people who are in opposition of this bill have used terms like cis or biological women. The latter is simply redundant. The former is insulting. Such language attempts to reduce who we are as girls and women. We are not subcategories of ourselves. We are female. People in opposition to bills like SB 524 have seemingly forgotten the path behind us and all too eager to push women back to the days when we were denied access to education, jobs, the voting booth, and yes, even sports. Rights are not often lost in one fell swoop, but they are chipped away little by little before we realize they're gone. Moreover, placing boys in girls' sports or girls in boys' sports endangers all of the students on that court or field. Allowing males to push females out of their own sports, steal their place and/or opportunities is unacceptable. The obvious physical differences between male and female are the impetus for sports separated by sex. This bill seeks to specifically protect women's sports, and I understand that. I understand why. However, the boys' sports are also at risk. Boys or men, depending on their level of competition, will not play to the best of their abilities if there is a female on the field or on the court. Just as males who have chosen to participate in female sports have caused significant injury to other players, the same would be said if the situation were flipped. Just to note that Senator Lang had stated that this does not impact co-ed sports. There's an opportunity for co-ed sports, but I wanted to bring it to your attention that co-ed sports have a different set of rules, keeping the biological differences in mind. And I have a copy of that if you'd like to see an example. In closing, I ask you to save girls' sports, save their opportunities, and save the tomboys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wait a minute, maybe some questions for you, Victoria.
Sorry.
Any questions from the committee members? Could you get that, you said the guidelines for co-ed sports?
Here you go. Co-ed basketball rules, and it even goes as far as there's different pointing structure for the women on the team, and there have to be so many men to so many female players on each team. So the
Okay.
rules are very different.
Could we get a copy of that? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Emma Sevigny.
Good morning, members of the committee and Chairperson Ward. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Emma Savini. I'm the Children's Behavioral Health Policy Coordinator at New Futures. New Futures is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that solves problems through policy change. We are here in strong opposition to Senate Bill 524 because transgender and non-binary students deserve the exact same rights as other students to play sports and develop the skills that are available that come from playing sports. We all envision a New Hampshire where kids feel welcome and supported in their schools and communities. Playing sports is an important component of that. Playing sports helps kids develop leadership skills, self-respect, self-discipline, social awareness. These skills not only help students in schools, but help them later in life. They're noted as really important skills to have when finding employment and being productive members of society. Transgender students deserve the opportunities to develop those skills through playing sports just as any other student. Senate Bill 524 would directly prohibit transgender students from playing sports that are aligned with their gender identities. When students are able to feel supported by playing sports or doing activities of daily living that are in alignment with their gender identities, their mental health outcomes are on par with their peers. For those reasons, New Futures is in opposition to 524 and would respectfully ask this committee to ITL the bill. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Now we have Michelle Boise.
Michelle couldn't make it today, so I was going to read her testimony, or to summarize her testimony for the committee, if that's all right.
Do you mind if I read on Michelle's behalf?
No, that's fine. Just state your name so we know who's reading it.
Thank you. This is Courtney Reed reading for Michelle Foisey from Temple, New Hampshire. Michelle is a mother of 6 children and is a physical therapist and wanted to speak in opposition to SB 524.
Michelle grew up in Londonderry, and from the moment she moved in town, she played sports. One of her strongest memories as a young runner was a meet that she had in 6th grade. It was a combined race with male and female athletes, and she came in 2nd place. From that meet, she went on to be the record holder in the 400 meter and 600 meter and the long jump. And she was then given a scholarship to Northeastern University for her track career, where her career continued. She explains that she wanted to cite her athletic career not to receive recognition, but to emphasize that her accomplishments were not once lessened by the runners that she ran against, but only improved upon. She learned numerous lessons. As a 5-year-old soccer player, she learned teamwork and dedication. As an 18-year-old runner, she learned self-discipline and drive. And her time as an athlete grounded her foundation as an adult and set her up to succeed in life through these lessons. And as a mother, she hopes that her children have the same opportunities that she was given to succeed in sports to allow them to thrive and succeed in their adult lives. She goes into a story about her child who struggled with mental health issues, exploring their gender identity, and eventually coming out as non-binary. She says that her queer child has started their own journey and that she's there to support them, and that they're incredibly fortunate to have their child with them today. She comes before you to share this very personal story to express deep concern for what this bill attempts to do. SB 524 would escalate and exacerbate the isolation that trans youth feel. Supporting and promoting blatant discrimination of transgender athletes is not the way of the Granite State. Sport should be a place where we embrace diversity and teamsmanship. What is a blanket ban doing? Her child has been an athlete since they were able to stand and kick a ball. They had planned to play soccer their freshman year of high school, and very unfortunately broke their wrist the first day of tryouts. Although they were cleared by the orthopedic physician, they insisted that the only position for them was goalie. Looking back, Michelle realizes that they might not have been able to play on one of these teams, and they're not sure if their gender dysphoria was the reason that they chose not to play. But we can't help but think that of the impact and the connection that it had. Michelle closes out her testimony by urging legislators to consider the repercussions that this bill could have on kids just like hers. And she encourages you to vote ITL for SB 524. And since I'm speaking on behalf of someone else, I will not take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can't ask any questions. I said you cannot ask any questions. That is it for the people who have signed up to testify. Is there anybody in the audience who feels compelled to testify that has not had a chance? If not, this closes the hearing. Motion to go in, like, I think we can do maybe 1 or 2 bills.
Madam Chair, I move we go into executive session.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We are now in an executive session.
Thank you. That's okay.
Make a motion on 339.
Yeah. Are we going to start right with that one?
Yep.
All right. 339.
339 has to do with the FAFSA requirement.
Yes. Madam Chair, I make a motion that SB 339 ought to pass.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Senator Prentice?
So,
one, I'm interested in hearing, one of the reasons we held off on execing this, I believe it was last week, is we were gonna check with our, former colleague, Senator Jay Kahn, now Mayor Jay Kahn, because he was
Right.
a proponent of this to see, and I don't know if Senator Benton, with his busy schedule, has had time to check in with him. But I also just want to say that if there, Senator Lang pointed out that there's already an opt-out provision, and if there's an opt-out provision so families can opt out of doing this, I don't know why we would repeal this, because they don't have to do it. They can opt out of it, and that wouldn't affect their graduation. So that's, so Senator Fenton, sorry to put you on the spot. Do you have any news
quite
from
all right.
Senator
No,
Kahn?
I spoke with former Senator Kahn, now Mayor Kahn, and I'm going to pose the ITL motion after speaking with him and researching this a little more. As my colleague said, there's already an opt-out option. This shows what options these students have and if there's money that they're eligible for. I don't know why we would want to take this requirement away, especially when it helps them, find money in order to get a higher education. And we were one of the early adopters of this program, along with like Tennessee, North Carolina, and the way I understand it, it's shown a lot of good results that helps students get to college. So that's why I'll be posing the ITL motion.
Well, I've heard that there was one state that thought this was the best thing that ever happened. But the parents I have spoken with have just, they don't like, it is a very invasive questionnaire. And they feel they have to give up so much personal information that many do not want to do it because of it. Now I hear that the questionnaire has significantly reduced its number of questions, so. That's Senator Lang.
So again, unlike the civics bill, which required a certification that you pass the civics exam, which is an academic requirement, this is not an academic requirement. This isn't about what you learned in school or anything else. This is just a form, a federal form, that's being required at graduation. And while I recognize the opt-out provision, again, I don't think people should be forced to require an opt-out. That they should be able, that it should be an opt-in. They should choose whether or not they want to do it or not. I know from having 4 kids in school and dealing with FAFSAs that I always made my ex-wife do this because it's such a lengthy form and invasive form. But again, while I don't disagree with what they want to achieve, I just don't think it should be a requirement for graduation. And for that reason, I'm going to support the OTP recommendation to repeal this requirement of graduation and leave it as, let the guidance counselors, which everybody says we need, let the guidance counselors work with the students to get these forms and work for scholarships.
Okay, we now have an amendment to that bill. Senator, did you want to say something first?
Sure, if I can, before I just have the amendment handed me, so I want to consider it. Opt-in or opt-out, that makes it almost not mandatory because parents can make choices whether they're going to do it or they're not going to do it. Okay, so and that's number one. And number two, as you pointed out, Senator Ward, we heard testimony that this has gone from, and I filled out, I only had one child, but I did all her FAFSA paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. It was pretty lengthy, but at 35 questions, I would welcome that day to know especially what my options are. There's no data that links this, no data that I can find. If someone wants to point it out to me, please go ahead, that links this as an option, opt-in or opt-out, to bringing about the probability of taking on more student debt. That's a decision that is outside of this. This just tells you where you stand. So those statements were made. I'm going to oppose the OTP. I think we passed this. I believe we passed this 24-0 as a Senate. There is a provision to opt. If you can opt out, you can opt in. It's not mandatory. Let's just inform the parents of what that. Make sure the guidance counselors are informing the parents that that's what's available. And the invasive nature of this has now been shifted down to 35 questions. So I think we should actually protect the best interests of the students and leave it as the law as it is. And now I'll look at Senator Murphy's amendment. Thank you very much.
I haven't seen the 35 questions, what they're asking, so I can't say that it's better or not. So, but to have this, as it stands right now, is a requirement for graduation. It is a requirement. Senator Lang?
I
I'm not gonna
move
step away from it.
amendment number 20240328S.
Second.
All those in favor of amendments 2024-032, whatever that thing is, can't read it, it's too small.
28.
Here we go. Those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm opposed.
There's 2 noes.
Opposed to the whole thing.
Senator Prentice, are you no?
I'm a no. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you, Senator Ward.
So it's 3-2 on the amendment. Now then we go back to the original bill. Those in favor of the original bill with the amendment?
If I may, I was just looking at the hearing report, that 26 people opposed this bill, signed in opposed, and 10 supported it. So looking at the public side, the sign-ins on that side, it's in support of keeping this in place. Thank you.
Are we back to the, did you want to say something, Senator Lang?
Oh, nope, sorry,
back
I'm
to
just
the
waiting
original
for
bill with
the
the amendment.
motion, the vote for OTPA.
So those in favor of O2P with the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opposed? No. Yes, no, opposed.
With amendment, it's 3-2. Okay. Who would like to take it out?
I'll take it out.
Kendra is gonna take it out. Okay.
Madam Chair, if we could look at Senate Bill 378.
378. That is the request from the Department of Education.
And I'd move OTP.
Establish Assistance Task Force.
Second.
All those in favor of the
Aye.
Aye.
bill? This
Aye.
does not require any legislators on the task force. It's strictly whoever they choose to have. The 378, I have a O2P. 5-0, put it on consent.
With consent.
Move to consent. All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
That's 5-0. Who wants to take it out?
I'll take it out.
You're gonna do 2 of them?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So Madam Chair, I, on Senate Bill 443 FN, OTP, as amended.
443, we don't have an amendment on that yet.
We just have to move the OTP first.
Just the OTP, okay.
And I'll second. Not yet.
No, it will be.
443, you said?
We're waiting on one. Yeah, 443.
No, I wrote the amendment. I have heard a lot of, what do you call it, noise? That the appropriation, the bill asking for appropriation have been unusually high this spring, this session. And we have 2 things in this bill. And I was wondering, is it worth, what I was saying is to take out section 1 and 2, which has to do with the building aids and the payback for the communities who spent money on their projects. If we take that out, then we can have 443, the transportation bill, go through. And then save that part for the budget. And as I'm looking at it right now, we have several building aid, building bills.
Correct.
And I'm thinking that if we can get together a group and we can talk about it, what is the best way to handle all of them.
Senator Ward, since this is my bill, thank you for bringing that forward. I don't disagree with that. I was happy to bring the message forward about school building aid and the necessity, but if we want to strike this for a budget year, but preserve section 2, which provides communities with all voluntary alternative forms of transportation, then, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So Madam Chair, just a item of clarification. So the amendment strikes basically 1 through 25 and leaves everything else in the bill?
Got it, yeah, the
Yeah.
section 1 and 2.
Thank you.
Yes, that's what, thank you for the amendment.
It would rename it to being the definition of school transportation vehicle as the act.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you. No, just for seeing it, but agreeing with it.
So we have a
Need a motion to move the
we have a
amendment?
motion and a second on 443.
Are we doing it?
Carrie made the
And-
motion, I made a second.
Sorry.
I'll second the,
And then we
Would-
have the amendments. Do what?
We need to move the amendment.
Right.
Wait, that's the one that I'm calling right now for the amendment.
did we have somebody move the amendment and second it?
Right.
I'll move it.
Second?
All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Thank you. Now, the underlying bill with the amendments. We have a vote to pass, and we have a second. All those in favor to move the whole bill?
Aye.
Aye. Because it's just section 2 now.
Move consent?
Second.
And I can take it out.
Okay,
Actually, second, we need to vote on that, and then I'll take it out, sorry.
this will take it up. Are we all set on that?
We need a vote for consent.
Yeah, consent 5-0. And Francis-
Aye.
Aye.
So,
Senator Ward, I'd be happy to take on
Senator is taking
443.
out the bill.
Madam Chair, we can look at Senate Bill 521.
I make a motion ought to pass on Senate Bill 521 FN.
And I'll second that.
That has to do, that was the master teacher.
Yes.
Do we have an vote to pass and a second on?
Yeah.
521, any discussion? All those in favor of vote to pass on 521?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Madam Chair,
All
move
those in
consent.
favor?
Move consent.
Second.
Consent? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
I can take it out.
Fenton wants to take it out. Okay. What's next?
I think the other
I
three
make
are on
a-
hold.
I think Prentice.
Senator Precious?
So I'd like to make an motion on, to pass on Senate Bill 525.
Administration of Education.
This is relative for, specifically for means testing for education freedom accounts, as introduced by Senator Alschuler.
I like to.
I'm happy to
hold-
speak to the
I
motion.
like to hold off on them because I like to make an amendment to that one. I think that the notion of having more frequent evaluation of income is a good one. I don't think it needs to be done every year. I'm thinking maybe Senator Lang had a suggestion, instead of doing it every 5 years, doing it when you switch from whether it's elementary school to middle school to high school, to have that kind of thing.
Senator Ward, if I may, so procedurally, I made a motion. I don't know if it was seconded, but I'm willing to withdraw that for just this discussion. Because I think you want to just talk to how you're going to organize this
Right.
coming in, correct?
Yep.
All right, so, did I have a second? All right, so I'm going to withdraw that. So I have no, Senator Ward, if we want to bring any bills that are related to the Education Freedom Accounts and talk about, you're proposing an amendment to this that would separate by moving from school to school to school versus annually?
Right.
So I'm talking grade level, like they're
Having-
elementary, middle school?
Yes, you know, acknowledging the fact that it probably is a good idea to have checking on the income. And not assuming that nothing is gonna change, but they say that somebody comes in kindergarten, that they're gonna be the same way for 12 years. But taking a look at it in the big, divisions in the school, where does the family stand at this point? Okay, Senator Lang.
Thank you. So again, I think the idea is, I think we all have kind of gathered around the idea that there should be a secondary, an additional income verification at a later date. My concern is about interrupting a child's school. And so therefore, my idea was, and we're pursuing the idea of creating an income verification at elementary school, at middle school, and at high school, entry into each one of those categories so that a child can finish out their elementary K through 5, they can finish out their 6 through 8, and high school. And a 5-year look adjustment would mean that in 10th grade, the student could potentially lose eligibility and have to change high schools, 2 years left in their career, and that doesn't make any sense at all. And interrupt a child, which is again what we're talking about, children interrupting their educational cycle. So I think it's reasonable to have some sort of plan that will look at income verification, but do it in a way that's least disruptive to the child.
Senator Ward?
Yes.
So thank you, Senator Lang. I'm not saying that, I'm for or against, but I just want to point out that in the Education Freedom Accounts Oversight Committee, which I had previously served on with Senator Ward, I have spoken to this more than once because I have constituents who've come to me, and even though I'm not in favor of the way we financially structure and have not been, means testing these families, what I've heard from families that are in the program is how disruptive it would be to their family. And I have advocated for building a transition or what could be considered a soft landing. So you are not in the best interest of the child in the middle of a school year, moving them someplace else, but have a way. And I think that is our responsibility as a policymaking body to number one, make sure that people are eligible, continuous eligibility. And number two, if the eligibility changes, how do we do this in a way there's a change necessitated with the least harm to the child? So I'm on record and I've discussed this, and I think Senator Ward, you remember probably too many times at that committee, but that's my position. All right. As it is right now, not on the, in general on EFAs, but I think we have to create a way to create a transition if it's going to happen.
To make it transparent.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have questions and concerns, and I think this will help. And I also would like to have some more information on the cost of doing this audits of 33 1/3% every year on the families. So I like to hold off on this.
And if I may, I just want to make it clear for the record that it might not be elementary to middle. It may be, at the end of a grade to another grade possibly, but I think that this is open for discussion. Thank you, Senator Ward, for bringing that up, and Senator Lang for your clarification. So we'll wait on that. I'll put that back.
Madam Chair, consider we still have 30 minutes. Can we take a 5-minute break so we can caucus and then come back and decide if we want to do anything forward?
As long as we can do whatever you want to take up.
Yep.
Do we
It'll
know
be
what
out
those
of here
bills?
by-
I don't know anything yet. I just want to have the conversation. I didn't think we'd get there.
Okay.
So
It would just be helpful if you're going to caucus on particular bills that you want us to come back in and consider that my colleague and I are made aware of exactly what those bills are, so we are prepared for the discussion. Okay, that's all.
so if we
Thank
have
you.
a 5-minute break and we
Got a
caucus real
feeling
quick.
But not more than 5.
Not more than 5.
Okay, which
Yeah,
one do
you've
you
got
want to focus on?
We have to recess.
Well, I wanted to take a look at both, hold on a second.
Madam Chair, Senator Fenton's wondering if we have to recess out of executive session to enter a caucus.
Say that again?
Would we have to come out of executive session if my colleague?
No,
and
we
I
can
are
take a
leaving?
recess while we're in executive session.
We'll just take a recess. Which one did you want to?
1 second, I'm trying to find it.
Do we have to do it
It's
today?
on the Avard's bill. Do we have to do it today?
Yeah,
No, we don't have to, but we have time. I didn't know if you wanted to take it up for a discussion.
what if we don't take, is there another one that we should take up, that we could take up and finish up?
Again, hold on, I was trying to find the bill number. Why can't I find the second bill?
I think two issues that I really think we need to really take a good, hard look at is the building aid and how, because we have had a couple of bills already in our committee that has to do with building, and I'd like to have it, so we don't have 3 or 4 different kinds of things, but how we can pull it together so that makes sense. And then the other thing that I think we really need to take another good hard look at is the transgender and athletes, because that has opened up a whole new world of what some of the issues are. And I would like to be able to sit down with somebody and really go through it and see how we can make this as equitable as we possibly can.
I'll withdraw my request.
Okay?
So, Madam Chair, I do want to, before we come out of executive session, speak. Yes, last night I sent out an amendment to 522. It was the pre-K program. It was referenced to me that I may have misspoke and said that it was an agreed upon amendment with everybody involved, and it was not necessarily. In trying to negotiate that, I was working with Senator Whitley as well as the DOE and as well as DHHS. And while nobody got everything they wanted, I tried to incorporate as much of the things that I felt I could support because it was my bill, and what I could allow in. So to understand that amendment that was brought is not an amendment that everybody was like, this is exactly what I want. It was a compromise amendment to a lot, and unfortunately, I was the one that got to decide because it was my bill on what things I was willing to accept into my bill and what things I could not support. So I'm asking we hold that bill even further because I'm still in conversation with the stakeholders, and while I know we're not going to come to an agreement 100%, I'm hoping I can clean up any leftover language that we still have conflict in that I think we can get support between our caucuses. So.
Do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are out of executive session. The next Tuesday, as far as I know, we may have one bill. I haven't seen it yet. That one that came out of the very late bills. There may be one. But other than that, it's some exact bills. So please, work, whatever you have to do, work it out and talk to people, and let's see what we can.